The single habit that separates the wealthiest people from everyone else costs nothing and requires no admissions office. Americans collectively owe $1.83 trillion in student loan debt as of 2025, carried by over 42 million borrowers, with the average federal balance sitting at $39,547 per person. That number is not an argument against college. It is a context. Because when you look at how extraordinary wealth is actually built, not above average income, but genuine, compounding generational wealth, the pattern that keeps appearing is not a diploma. It is a habit, and it is available to anyone, starting today, with no application required. The habit is deliberate, daily learning applied strategically to build what investor and entrepreneur Naval Ravikant calls leverage. Ravikant, the founder of AngelList and one of the most successful early-stage investors in American technology history, argues that we live in an age of infinite leverage, and that the economic rewards for genuine intellectual curiosity have never been higher in human history. The people who understand this are building wealth at a pace that would have been structurally impossible for previous generations, and the people who do not understand it are working hard in a system that, without leverage, pays them only for the hours they put in. Here's the thing about hours. They are the most finite resource any person possesses. You get the same 24 hours as every billionaire alive. The difference is not how many hours they work. It is how much their decisions and knowledge are multiplied by the forces working on their behalf while they are not in the room. Ravikant calls these forces leverage, and he identifies 4 types: labor, meaning other people working for you; capital, meaning money working for you; and then the 2 newest and most democratically available forms, code and media. He describes these last 2 as permissionless leverage, and the distinction matters enormously for your financial life right now. Labor leverage requires you to convince people to work for you. Capital leverage requires someone to give you money or for you to already have it. But code leverage, building software, tools, or automated systems, and media leverage, creating content, writing, video, audio, systems of ideas, require no one's permission. You do not need a boss, an investor, or an institution to access them. You need knowledge and the discipline to apply it. That is why, as Ravikant puts it, the new generation's fortunes are being built through code and media rather than the old ways, and why a kid in a small town with a laptop and a genuinely useful idea now has access to a form of leverage that previous generations would have needed a corporation to obtain. But here is the behavioral piece that most people skip past. The habit that gives you access to leverage is not the leverage itself. Leverage is the output. The input, the daily practice that actually creates it, is deliberate cross-disciplinary learning, not scrolling, not passive consumption of content you already agree with. Deep, intentional reading and study, applied to building knowledge that compounds over years into judgment that is rare enough to be genuinely valuable. Warren Buffett has made the mechanics of this more transparent than any other person on earth. He spends 5 to 6 hours a day reading annual reports, newspapers, biographies, books across economics, psychology, history, and business. He has said, in a line that has been quoted so many times it risks losing its impact, read 500 pages every day. That's how knowledge works. It builds up, like compound interest. His business partner Charlie Munger reinforced this from a different angle when he told a group of law students that he has never, across his entire life, known a genuinely wise person with broad knowledge who did not read constantly. None. Zero. Munger's formulation of the goal was simple and worth memorizing. Go to bed every night a little wiser than when you got up. That is the rich habit. Not the reading itself. It is the compound rate of daily intellectual improvement, applied consistently over years and decades until the gap between what you understand and what the average person in your field understands becomes large enough to be monetized through some form of leverage. Let's be real about what makes this hard. The behavioral obstacle to this habit is not laziness. Research on attention and media consumption consistently finds that the modern information environment is engineered to hijack the same dopamine reward systems that make investing exciting and impulsive. Every notification, Every trending video, every algorithmically served piece of content is competing for the attention that compound learning requires. The average American now spends several hours each day on their phone. That time is not neutral. It is actively displacing the focused reading that would otherwise build knowledge that compounds. The gap between people who use their discretionary time to build leverage and those who spend it on passive entertainment is widening every year, not narrowing, because the tools for permissionless leverage keep getting more accessible, which means the competitive advantage of actually knowing how to use them keeps growing. Here's where the college degree comparison becomes instructive. A November 2025 study from the Brookings Institution found that college graduates earn on average $10,400 more per year than similar non-completers. After accounting for student loan payments, that advantage drops to around $8,000 per year. Bachelor's degree holders spend approximately 19% of their increased earnings servicing their debt, and each additional $10,000 in student loan debt delays a borrower from reaching the national median net worth by 26%, according to research cited in federal education data. None of this means college is without value. For many fields and many people, it absolutely is worth it. The point is narrower and more specific. A degree is a credential. Credentials open doors. But leverage is what you walk through the door and do once it is open, and no degree confers leverage automatically. What confers leverage is the knowledge that compounds over years of deliberate learning, then gets applied through a medium or system that multiplies your effort. The behavioral mistake most people make, and this is the self-sabotaging pattern worth naming clearly, is treating learning as something that happens in an institution and stops when they leave it. The formal education system teaches you enough to be employable in a specific lane. What builds wealth is the learning that happens after, in the hours you control, applied to domains where your curiosity runs ahead of your credentials. Munger's own model for this was explicit. He called it the lattice work of mental models, the idea that if you read deeply across multiple disciplines, you eventually start seeing patterns that people who only read within one field cannot see. An investor who also understands psychology spots market behavior that a purely quantitative analyst misses. A product builder who also understands behavioral economics designs tools that feel obvious once they exist and are invisible before. The cross-disciplinary reader accumulates edges that compound into judgment, and judgment in an age of infinite leverage is the most valuable asset that exists. Now here is the most practically actionable version of this for your week. The structural barrier most people hit is that deep reading competes with everything urgent in a life that is already full. The behavioral solution is not willpower. It is scheduling, which is a form of the pre-commitment you have heard about in previous scripts. Choose 1 hour per day. Morning works best for most people because willpower and attention are freshest before the demands of the day erode them. And treat it as non-negotiable. Put it on your calendar with the same protection you give a meeting with your highest priority client. During that hour, read something that is slightly outside your immediate job description but related to a domain where you want to build leverage. If you work in marketing, read behavioral psychology. If you are in finance, read systems, thinking, or engineering history. If you are building a side business, read about the mechanisms of platforms that scaled and why. The goal is not information. It is the gradual construction of a knowledge base that nobody else in your immediate professional environment has, because that rarity is what makes your judgment valuable enough to eventually charge for or build into something that compounds without you. The 30-day commitment is this. Every morning for 30 days, before you open your phone, read for 1 hour from a book in a domain adjacent to your primary skill. Keep a simple note, 1 sentence per session, of the most important idea you encountered that day. At the end of 30 days, you will have a collection of 30 ideas that most people in your field have never been exposed to. That is the beginning of a knowledge base that compound interest can work on. Charlie Munger spent decades building his and described the result in terms that should stop you cold. The most important decisions of my life took about 15 minutes each. The preparation behind those 15 minutes took decades. The preparation was the reading. The 15 minutes were the leverage. At Next Gen Finance, this is the kind of framework we come back to again and again. Not because it is complicated, but because it sits underneath nearly every other wealth-building conversation worth having. Your earning capacity, your investment judgment, your ability to build something that scales beyond your hours. All of it draws on the quality of what you put into your mind over years. Subscribing means you get every piece of this built-out framework as it comes, research-backed, behavior-focused, and oriented toward the practical steps that actually move your financial life forward. Leave me a comment with one honest answer. What is the last book you finished that genuinely changed how you think about money or wealth? And how long ago was that? I read every single comment, and your answer helps shape what this channel covers next. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial or investment advice. Please do your own research and consult a licensed financial professional before making any financial decisions.